They say man discovered fire about 1.5 million years ago. And somewhere around 400,000 years ago, we started to sit around that fire and something amazing happened. One person began to talk, everyone else leaned forward and they listened. That's the circle. Circles are about listening to other people. It's about building relationships through listening. And it's a skill that we just don't have anymore in our current society. Everyone's thinking about talking constantly, and they're thinking about what they want to say. We have to have a mechanism or a strategy to eliminate that, because that's how true relational listening happens. Everyone wants to be heard, but no one's listening. That's why circles work. And if we can get people together to do that on a regular basis, and we know that we're there to listen to each other, to play with ideas, everyone's emotional intelligence in that circle will grow, which is good for any community or any society. As someone talks to me, especially when I'm trying to form a relationship with someone, I spend the entire time repeating their words in my head as they say them. Now, you can do that with me right now, and what you'll find is that it's impossible for you to think about anything else. Okay, you can stop if you were doing it. But that's the power of the circle. And if you can diligently, consistently do that with every member, you will afford them dignity. You will make them feel important. You will make them feel like you really want to hear what they have to say, and by default, you'll build a relationship with them. That's the circle. That's the power that it brings to every environment. Now, circle isn't appropriate for every situation, but when we want to build deep relationships and build empathy, we always use a circle. So that's the tool that we use when we communicate with students, with teachers, with parents. Now, I understand that there's natural hierarchies between teachers and students and administrators and parents. There are natural hierarchies. But for a brief moment, we pause. And everyone matters, because at the center of that circle is a point of dignity. Not respect, dignity. We'll get to respect, and we'll grow respect, but respect is based on individual achievement or accomplishment. Circle isn't. Circle is about the fact that we're all human. We all have this worth as a human being, and that's called dignity. Everyone that enters the circle matters, because we're all in equal distance. There's no beginning, there's no end to a circle. There's nobody in a position of prominence. There is no hierarchy in a circle, and it's one of the only places that we get to pause from this world of hierarchies just for a second. If you're in the circle and you're a teacher, you're a participant. You're an equal distance from the center, and you're just a participant. And a lot of teachers have a hard time with that because they think that they have to direct the circle. They don't. The circle will manage itself because it's been happening for 400,000 years. Trust the circle. If you operate the circle correctly, it will always work, and it will solve almost any issue that man can bring to the circle. There's a few things when you start a circle that are very important. Number one, make it a true physical circle and put a chair so everybody is comfortable. Try not to go too big on your circle. I don't like doing enormous circles because it's about listening. And if you try and do a circle over 20 people, it's very challenging. Now, the beginning and the activator portion of a circle can work with larger groups, and it certainly can be fun. But then I would say break it up into smaller circles for communication and for relationship building, for deep relationship building. But number one, everybody's seated in a circle so they're comfortable. I wouldn't have some people standing and some people seated. I'd have people seated. So call to order the circle, and the first thing you have to do is John Medina's number one brain rule, motion, and add fun. Because when most people come to circle and it's their first time, they do this, they put their hands on their lap, like any student that's just seated at a desk, and they shut their brain down. And there's tons of activators. With little kids, it might be duck, duck, goose. Just get them moving. Turn the brain on. When the brain moves, it lights up like a Christmas tree. And that's what we need if we're going to start a circle. Hands down, unequivocally, don't ever start with your connection questions. Don't ever start with anything deep. Start with an activator. Have fun. I always say taking fun out of education should be called abuse. If you want kids to learn, that's how they learn best, is through fun. So once we do that, at some point I'm going to talk about the guidelines. And I'm going to make consensus very important to the guidelines. So basic guidelines for me, talking piece, no talking. And then I have something with me, some kind of talking piece or token. And I say, listen, if you have this, and usually it's a superhero doll or something of meaning, if you can bring something deep of meaning, like your dog's collar that passed away a year ago that you grew up with, that's a really good thing to bring to a circle because we can have a great conversation about that. But I usually say, if you have this, you're allowed to talk. If you don't, you can't talk. And I hand it to someone. And I take it back and I say, you got to say something, bro. And then they make their first fatal mistake. They say something. And I say, quiet! And everybody jumps in the circle. And I'm having fun still. So that's what I do. I set the tone with this talking piece because it's very, very important that everyone understand that if you don't have it, you can't talk. Teachers will break the rule because they'll want to say something important. Take the talking piece and I say, no. You're a participant in the circle. If there's a safety issue, like someone's going to be hurt or something is completely inappropriate, fine, do your job. But if not, respect the circle because it will work. But if I had to talk to a teacher now, don't break the rule. Because if you break the rule, you're just showing them that they can break the rule. Don't do that. Maintain the order of the circle. If you want to change directions, I'm okay with that after it gets back to the facilitator. And the deep importance in that is that people automatically, unconsciously will start to think about what they want to say. And if you pass across the circle, it's going to get people to stop listening. Number 3, if you don't want to talk, you don't have to. Don't overemphasize this point. Be very careful. We don't want to put someone on the spot that has a difficult time communicating. I tell teachers all the time, you can't have a good basketball game without some good watchers. If they want to pass, let them pass. It doesn't matter. Eventually they'll share. I promise you that. Every circle I've been in, the kid that doesn't participate eventually does if you hit the right question. And a lot of times the kids will just hit it themselves because what this kid says over here is what this kid is thinking that didn't share. Last but not least, what happens in the circle stays in the circle. Everybody says, and it's the worst thing you can say to a kid, in my opinion, when you start a circle, we're going to respect each other here. It's a terrible piece of advice. Well, all kids aren't going to respect each other out of the gate in a circle. That's why we start from that place of dignity and we move from there and we build respect through the trust that we establish with one another. And if you share things that are said in the circle, done in the circle, even something silly like somebody slips and falls during the game, it has to stay in the circle. Typically, I'm able then very quickly to move into framing the circle up. And then you have to get to the important content, the deep, difficult, tough conversation. That's the first place I start, is once I set that tone, everybody knows it, and then I just go into my connection questions. And I have some standard connection questions, and my connection questions are about opening people up within their own comments or within their own assumptions. When I ask a question, I expect to have another question on why they answered the way they did. And these are very soft questions. They're softballs that I'm lobbing in, but they have deep meaning. They have deep archetypal meanings is what they really do. And I look at the kid next to me on the right or the left, and I say, who's your favorite superhero and why? And then I hand it to him. And I've learned that there's a reason that they say what they say. And they'll try and give you that surface level why. And inevitably, because I've announced that it doesn't have to be a real comic book superhero, it could be anyone. Then someone will make themselves a little bit vulnerable, and they'll say, my mom, because she has done everything for me. So when it gets back and some other young lady or young man across the circle says Wonder Woman is his or her favorite superhero, and they tell me why, because she's a strong woman. Perfect. Got it. Now when it gets back to me as the facilitator, especially as the educator in the group, my job isn't really even to talk about my superhero. I only tell young people my favorite superhero if they ask. I always take the time as a facilitator to tell everyone quickly what I just learned. And usually I'll go and draw that line between that person that said Wonder Woman because she's a strong woman and that person that said their mom was their superhero. Boom. And it goes right through the center of dignity. If someone has really made themselves vulnerable in that first or second round, other people will be given permission to be vulnerable. I start to connect these radius lines in a very fun and in a space of gratitude, always thanking kids for sharing this. And I do it quickly. And I'm just planting in their brains little relationship things that people used to do when they would talk and listen to each other. I think any facilitator can come up with their own questions. I just caution you to come up with questions that have deep meaning to the people in the group. So for me, and this is where our compulsory education has a bit of a challenge, is we put that circle together. So, we did a circle this week. Okay, why don't you just talk to your wife once a week for 30 minutes? That's a really bad idea. Oh, why don't you just talk to your kid 30 minutes once a week? What kind of relationship are you going to have with your own people in your own life? Not a very good one. So the more circle you can do, the better, the stronger it becomes. Circles are about, over time, security, number one. Don't forget this. We know that cultures can only be built when people feel secure. You will only share when you feel safe to share. And number two, over time, they're about small shared moments of vulnerability. You have to go around the circle and you have to connect all these radius lines over and over and over and over and over. It's like a spider spinning a web, going around, doing this circle. Those are small shared moments of vulnerability. And that takes time. You might get to a tough conversation about something, And then we let everyone share when it comes to those tough topics, around and around and around. And over time, the relationships will just naturally build. But it's practice that needs to happen. And the circle needs practice just like any other skill. Well, thanks everyone for coming here. I know most of you didn't have a choice. You get made to do it. He's like, yeah. So this is my friend Pat. Hi, Pat. Let's try it again. Hi, Pat.
Hello, Pat.
We're gonna have fun because we're in school, and that's what school is designed for me to do, is to have fun, because the best way to learn things is by having fun. And the first thing we're gonna learn is everybody's name. And my man Pat is gonna show us how to learn everybody's name before we start.
Pat.
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 Dan. Pat.
Dan.
Owen. Doodly-doo.
Lydia, and I like to do the monkey bars.
Ooh, I've never heard that one. Pat.
Dan.
Owen. Doodly-doo.
Warren.
Mike. Lydia. Chris. John.
Wyatt.
Tom.
What's your name? Kennedy, and I like to do karate.
All right. Anyone think they can? All right. Does anyone think they can go through without anyone's help?
Nobody help them. Pat, Dan, Owen, Warren, Mike, Lydia, Chris, John, Wyatt, Tom, and Kennedy.
What was impressive about that is usually they have to stop at some point and look at the person.
Yeah.
He just had it all up here.
Most people think making yourself vulnerable is making yourself look silly or ridiculous. And the one lesson I'm going to leave you here with today is going to be around that, but we're not going to get there yet. So have a quick seat, because we just didn't have enough fun yet. I'm going to pass you something, and can you pass it to Pat? It's called the flash. Ready? I fell asleep. You ready? The flash, people. The flash. Ready? That's better. We can do a little bit faster. Ready? Not too bad. We'll do one more flash. Ready? Now pay attention though. Don't just pass it so you know what it is. Ready? That was pretty good. So this game is called Will You Be My Sweetheart? And I'm going to come to the center, I'm going to scratch my head, and I'm going to say, will you be my sweetheart? And you're going to say, only if. Will you be my sweetheart?
Only if.
And if you fit this condition, you have to stand up, and you have to find a chair in this circle only that's not yours. Okay? And you have to sit down. Can't be your seat. So will you be my sweetheart?
Only if.
Watch this. If you have shorts on. Oh.
Okay.
Will you be my sweetheart?
Only if.
You have red sneakers.
Go, Lydia!
All right. Will you be my sweetheart?
Only if.
You graduated from Sable Valley.
Will you be my sweetheart if you're wearing
Only
Only
if.
if.
if you're wearing clothes?
Be weird if no one got up.
Will you be my sweetheart?
Only if.
You have buttons on your shirt.
All right. No more physical conditions.
Will you be my sweetheart?
Only if.
You have taken a karate class.
Will you be my sweetheart?
Only if.
You have dogs.
That's a nice move, Pat. The number one thing about learning, there's a famous scientist named John Medina. And the number one thing about learning is motion. He says the greatest brain rule for learning is moving. So you can always learn best after you move. So that's why it's just so darn important. So I just want to ask you a couple of questions because I just learned who likes flowers in here. Everybody got up. That was pretty cool. We all like flowers in here, right? And we know that Wyatt pretends like he doesn't take forever to do his hair in the morning, but he does. And so if you really listen and watch what people are doing and saying during that game, you can learn a lot about people. And that's really why I'm here, is to learn about you. So this here, when you have it, means that you're allowed to talk. If you don't have it, you're not allowed to talk. So here's how it works.
I like to eat ice cream in bed with a fan, so that way it doesn't melt.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect. So here's, you threw me off. You followed the rules, right? That's good. I promise all of you, I will never break the rule. So a couple things about this. We never pass it across the circle, right? Because that's a bad idea. It gets people to stop listening. Because you're like, oh, I want to talk. Oh, I and then you stop listening to what other people are saying. That's a bad idea. And if you don't want to say anything, you could just pass. We'd have a really bad circle if we didn't have any watchers. So if you want to skip, just pass it on. So I just wanted to learn a few things about you. Who's your favorite superhero and why?
Favorite superhero is Batman. But that's, I think, because my mom and I went to see the Michael Keaton Batman together. It might have been the only movie that just the two of us went without my brothers, sisters, or father.
My favorite superhero is probably Superman because he can fly, and flying is awesome. My favorite superhero is Hulk because he's smart in one hand, and then he can turn and be muscular. How about you?
Are you asking me my favorite superhero? That's high level right there. I don't usually have anyone have me hesitate because no one in hundreds and hundreds of circles have ever turned to me and said, who's yours? I just usually go on with what I was doing. I was just taking a few notes, by the way, not texting. I should have said that first. But I'm very impressed that you took the time, and I would throw it back at you because you said, what's neat about you that I've just learned is you took two different approaches at the question. You said, I like Hulk because he's smart on one hand, but he's strong on the other. And you took two, what they call different archetypes, right? We can talk about that later, but two original copies, and you find interest in both of them. Mr. Incredible is my favorite superhero, and my answer is just a little bit longer, and I'll give you the short version. I like Mr. Incredible because, number one, he's a terrible father. And if you know what I'm talking about, you've seen the movie, like he's very impatient with his kids, but he loves his kids, right? Like he'd do anything for his kids. Number two, what's the most important thing, and I'll yell at you if you talk, what's the most important thing in Mr. Incredible's life? You probably never thought about it. There's only one thing in both movies that broke him. Only one thing that broke him. Helen, he thought, was in the plane, and he thought she got blown up. So my wife is the most important thing in my life. Like she's more important than my kids. That sounds weird. Like I don't really mean it like for people to think it's weird, but she's the most important thing in my life is my wife. And last but not least, who created syndrome? So there's two things that humans need, right? Only two things. I mean, you need food, shelter, and water. But outside of that, what do you need? You need some kind of meaning in your life. And that's all that kid wanted, right? when Mr. Incredible's like, because remember in the first movie he showed up to be his sidekick. He just wanted to be Mr. Incredible's sidekick. And he might have done some amazing things and used his amazing brain, his technology brain, to cure all kinds of diseases or help all kinds of people. But he used his amazing brain for destruction. All because that bumbling idiot, Mr. Incredible, said, "Go home, Billy." So for me, I'm not always the best dad, but I try real hard. I'm not always the best husband, but Wendy's the most important thing in my life. And I create all my own problems. Like most dads, right? We were talking about their dad earlier. And I know where she likes to go with just her dad because he's like Mr. Incredible too, right? But I just learned a ton about everybody here. I really want to know more about his mom and the relationship that he had with his mom. Now, I just drew a really neat line. Her dad takes her, I don't mean to out her here, but it's special. Her dad takes her somewhere where just the two of them go and eat. Just like your mom and you, and the only movie that you might have ever seen with your mom that's important to you. And this guy nearly got a tear out of my eye because he picked a real life superhero in the real world just like him, right? You threw me for a loop because I thought for sure you were gonna say Spider-Man, but you said Batman. That's interesting. Captain Marvel. I can see Captain Marvel, and some of you that don't know Captain Marvel, you might think it's a man. It's not. She's not, right? She's strong like the mom who is a doctor. You know your mom's a doctor? And so is Captain Marvel. And it's great that she's in your life because she gives you such a great example of what strong women can do. No wonder you picked it. So real quick, if you had a time machine, where would you go and why?
If I had a time machine, I'd go back to see my papa because I never got a chance to see him, and he served in the Air Force, and pass.
If I could go back, I'd probably go to like in January so I could finish my senior year out. I know it's kind of a corny answer, but as much as like while I was in high school, you know, I said I always wanted to, you know, get out of there and leave, but not getting to do all the best things we waited for kind of sucks. And yeah, that's where I'd probably go.
If I had a time machine, I would go back to where before my cat ran away because I only had him for like a year, and he was my favorite.
If I could go back in the time machine, kind of like your answer, I'd go back and spend time with the cat I had. As goofy as it may sound, but I love her so much because I got her when I was a kid and she lived to be like 18 years old. So like probably one of the closest like pets I've ever had in my entire life. So I'd definitely go back and, you know, spend more time with her and love her more, for sure.
Just a couple big ones connecting the grandfather and the mystery and something he did you don't just get those bronze battle stars. And my daughter's in the Air Force, so that meant a lot to me. Your answer was one of the best in the circle, just because I spent the last however many years, 10 years talking to young people. And when I was your age, if you told me school was gonna be canceled and I didn't have to finish it, I would have been like, yes! But I've heard from more kids than I can count over the last 2 or 3 months that say, man, I'd love to go back and finish. Like that represents the thing that you worked the hardest on your whole life. And none of us knew what that meant to take that away from young people. I know how much cats means to her because their cats are named Cloak and Dagger. It's one of the first things I learned about these two. But she had a cat before, see, I didn't know that. And Wyatt was the only one that threw me for a loop. I thought for sure I would have paid money, would have been like, go visit Houdini, hang out with him. And you blew my mind, actually, to say with your cat. So I'm gonna stop using this, so we don't have to do that anymore. And I'm not gonna take very much more of your time, because I feel like right now, like this is my little family right here. And we certainly don't know each other as well as you know other parts of your family. But I feel like I know you, and I feel differently about all of you than when I first came in here and was just messing around. If I go to town and a group of people are like not being nice to me, I'm pretty sure that someone in this circle would say, oh, no, that's Tom. Like, he likes Mr. Incredible, and he's a little weird. He runs around and plays these games and stuff like, he's okay. Or Wyatt would use his real superpower, magic, and he'd run over and distract everybody with his magic. And you'd come running by, right? And you'd be flexing, especially when you get older and I'm an old man, and you'd be like, look at me, because you'd be like the Hulk, right? And you'd be calling Wyatt and saying, hey, Wyatt, man, I need your help, because that's what superheroes do sometimes, right? They call other superheroes for help. Does anybody have a quick question? Okay, hold on, wait, just stay, put your hand up. What is she doing? Do you have any friends? When you talk to them, do you raise your hand? Huh. You don't have to raise your hand, we're friends. Just talk to me. That was kind of silly, huh? You have a question? Yeah, just say it.
You know how you said it before? Yeah, you feel like you're not the best father, but you didn't like mean it like that. Sometimes I feel I'm not the best sister to Lydia, because sometimes we get in little fights, and I feel like I could be a better sister.
Tell me your mind wasn't just blown. You make me want to cry. You make me want to just give you a big hug. That was the best thing I've heard all week. I'm going to stop being silly. That was the best thing I've heard all week. And I guarantee you, it's one of the best things she's ever heard in her whole life. And I know that she's super proud to have you as a sister. And I don't even have to ask her. So you're pretty amazing.